Good afternoon, everyone. We still have some folks filtering in, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Welcome to our July EAC. We are seeing a good influx of attendees today, so that's great. Hopefully everyone is staying cool. If you have not attended one of our EACs before, we utilize the Zoom webinar, and the webinar functions allow you to raise your hand when you have questions. And if you have a question that you don't maybe want to raise your hand for and ask in the main room, you can also use the advisory committee at CalSTRS.com email address. And we have folks monitoring that box while we conduct our meeting. So if you have not already downloaded the materials for today's meeting, you can scan the QR code you see on the screen, and that will take you directly to the page where the agenda and any other items for today's meeting are being kept on our website. And like I said, you will have audio capabilities to ask questions, but you will have to raise your hand, and then we will call on you, and then we will ask you to unmute. All right, so if we can go on to the next screen, we have a pretty full agenda for you today. And then one more, there you go. So we have a lot of updates for you on a lot that has been going on at CalSTRS that affect you, and we've talked about a lot of these things before. So a lot of this is going to be updates on where we are in the processes and things like that. So we'll go through the agenda. We will have an open forum. And if you have any questions about anything, again, feel free to raise your hand. Some of the speakers might prefer that that they take questions at the end of their presentation. Some of them will maybe take them in the middle of it. I do see that we have one call-in attendee. So if you are unable to raise your hand because you are a call-in, you again can use that email address in advisorycommittee@calstrs.com. All right, so I believe our first presenter is Jeff Zimmer with our advisory letter and invoice update. So if we want to bring Jeff to the screen and then bring up his presentation.
Thank you, Kim, and welcome everyone. This is an update on advisory letters. So these are the letters that were effective July 1st, just a few weeks ago, that you can request specific information about a contract, a question, more complex related to compensation information, and how to report it. So I just wanted to give a brief overview. The next slide is my only slide, and also talk about invoices, by the way. So basically, these are formal responses, and I want to make sure that's clear, is that these are advisory letters have what I call the weight of liability. So it's a formal response. We still have dedicated staff, expert staff to answer your questions every single day. Please continue to reach out to employer help or the training and development team should you have questions. They're there to help you. Nothing has changed. When there is a situation, and this could be an exclusive representative, it could be a union asking for this information, but if there's a district or a county that has a specific information, a specific question that is complex that we can put into writing, so it's a formal response, holding that, and it's specific to the requester, not everyone that might see it if you share it with anyone else. It's just for the requester, specific information about how to report something. And then later on, should there be an audit about that particular item where CalSTRS assigned that's a finding, you have that advisory letter to say, wait a minute, CalSTRS told us exactly what to do in this situation. That's why we asked. And if there's any re-reporting necessary because of that, and there's an overpayment that occurs to a retired member or a beneficiary, that would be considered CalSTRS error, not employer error. So that's why I call this a formal response to a specific question, again, regarding compensation that is included or proposed to be included in a written contractual agreement. The law states CalSTRS has 30 days to provide a response, and we have all intentions of adhering to that. And like I said, both employers and exclusive representatives can request an advisory letter about one of these specific compensation reporting topics about how to treat something. So we've gotten two. So we've gotten advisory letter requests already, and they're working through the process. and we write the response, and our legal team looks at it, and we provide it back. So, and they've been good questions. This is why we have the process. They are not vanilla questions. These are specific and a little bit off the beaten path. And again, not explicit in law, so it may rely on interpretation a little bit. So that's why we want to clarify it in the advisory letter. And that's why the requesters wanted it clarified in the advisory letter. So I had a conversation with an employer and a union prior to July 1st, San Bernardino, I believe, and they were in negotiations about this specific thing. And we talked about it. I talked to the county. I talked to the union. We all, we hashed out the issue. And I told them at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for an advisory letter, because this was prior to our ability to administer them and provide them. But it was a really good conversation, and we provided guidance. And so hopefully they got what they need. But I'm like, oh, I wish it was 2 weeks from now, because we could totally do an advisory letter for this. And then you could have a written document of what we discussed. We still provided information, like I said, but that is what this is for, those situations where you might be at negotiations, or there's a question about an interesting population of educators that need a question answered. That's why we have the advisory letters. So as I have on here, calstrs.com/advisory letters. Couldn't be easier to remember. That's where it is. You can find information, FAQs about the process. You can find a form. If you wanted to print out a form and provide it, you could do that. But there's also a submission on the website where you can provide information on the website. And it requires certain things, like we need all the information about that question. If there's a contract or an MOU or specific language, all of that is in the request form, so you can see what's required, because we need the whole information. We need all of the information to answer it completely. So that's why we ask for those things right at the beginning, so that we have everything we need. If there's something that we need later on, like 15 days into the review of the process, we may ask you and say, hey, we need something else. We need this document or this other side letter that you have. Please provide that, and that will actually start the clock again, because now we have all the information that we need to provide the response. So just so you know, the more you provide up front that's compliant with our requests for what you attach, the faster everything will go. I'll pause here in case there's any questions about advisory letters before I do a very brief update on the employer invoice process. I'm looking for hands.
So I see Anna and then Lindsay, probably in that order.
Perfect. Anna, good afternoon.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I believe it was one of our districts that has submitted at least one of those letters.
Yes.
The question that I have, what they told me is that they only receive a receipt notification email, but it doesn't include like what was submitted with the request. So my question is, when they get the advisory letter, will they also get a copy of all the documentation that was submitted for review?
I assume, now I'm a little bit confused, because are you saying that the district that requested it submitted a contract or information regarding their question? Are you asking if we're going to provide it back when we provide the response?
Yes. So right now, she uploaded the documents, but there is nothing to track what was uploaded from her side.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Now, should we need anything, we definitely would have asked for it. So right now, I think silence on a question about can you provide something else means we have everything we need. But that's a good recommendation for process improvement in the future, to say, okay, we received a request, we have everything that we need for it, and we'll continue to work on it and provide you a response within 30 days.
But I guess my question is more towards once they get the reply, okay, they review the documentation and it's determined that it is credible as it goes to the DBS account.
Sure.
So that letter is, how do we know what that letter was applied to? How do we know what language it was reviewed? Like it could have been an MOU that was signed in 2023 versus something that could have been signed in 2025.
Okay.
So the specific documentation that was reviewed, is that going to be part of the attachment to the advisory letter?
I guess it could be, Anna. And the only reason I'm hesitating is Samantha might be able to jump in here. I believe that we did certify to the district that requested the advisory letter that we had everything we needed. And I would assume that the district retained the information that they sent us, that they could then know that that was what they asked us about.
Yes, so they do have that, but should this become a problem? Should it be an audit finding later? Sorry. I just wanted to make sure, okay, this specific letter was specific to this article in this CBA agreement as of,
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'll talk with the team about, potentially providing the information back, because it was our assumption that a district would have retained that, or a union would have retained the information, and then they would just apply the advisory letter to what they asked us about. In the advisory letter, it specifically states, this is about contract X, the title of the section, so on and so forth. It says, pay increase for substitute teachers, bargaining agreement 10.2.4. So we explicitly reference exactly the part of the contract that the advisory letter request was for. So hopefully that'll tie everything together, because the advisory letter will be very explicit about, we are talking about this piece in the contract that titled this, that you asked about on this date. So hopefully that will help.
We also, just to jump into, Jeff, we also have the, in the advisory letter enclosures, will be including the MOU or the contract that was provided. So it'll have that also in the completed advisory letter once we get it. So it'll say enclosures, and then it'll have the title of the whatever documentation that the employer submitted to us. So we submit that back, in addition to what Jeff's saying about specifically referencing it throughout the advisory letter.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Ann, and thank you, Sam, for jumping in. And Kim, I can't remember who might have been next in line for a question, but I am open to any.
Lindsay was next, but it looks like maybe she put her hand down.
Okay.
And then Anna, if I could have you put your hand down as well. Thank you. So any other questions on the advisory letter process? Okay, I think you're in the clear, Jeff.
Thanks, Kim. I think I have one more slide about invoices, and if not, I can riff. Let's see. So basically the high level, here we go. Still scheduled for this summer, and still scheduled for the first quarters of the new legislation, January, February, and March. And like we've said before, this is just a reiteration, nothing new here. A little bit new in a minute, but nothing new here. County report source, county report unit, district, member beneficiary information, client ID. We had heard previously, I think it was the last EAC, it might have been 2 ago, I can't remember exactly, is the request to put the STM ID. So actually the media ID on the invoice, so you could potentially trace it back to what caused the recalculation of the benefit, and that might make your research a little bit easier. We're trying that. So we're testing it out, because there's not a consistent one-to-one with the STM ID and the change when we put it on the invoice. What we're trying to do is we can disclose the last one that we got before the benefit recalculated and adjusted. Now, I would expect most of the time that will be good enough. It's likely that the STM that came in, the file that came in right before the recalculation, is probably the one that caused it, but it's not 100% always true. So we will put that in the invoice and say, hey, this is the STM ID that came in previous to the subsequent benefit adjustment. However, it may not indicate the actual thing that caused the adjustment, just to make sure that it's not 100%. You understand it's not a guarantee that that is the exact STM, but we think it will help you get closer to the answer and do your research a little bit more efficiently. So that's what we learned from our system when we're doing the testing for the invoices. So we heard what you wanted, and this is what we will provide, again, in the hopes that it will make your research a little more easy. Any questions about that?
Looks like you're good.
Okay. And if anyone has any questions about either of these topics, feel free to email me, reach out to the training and development team, employer help. We will walk you through this if you have any questions that come up in the near or the medium term or the long-term future. So I appreciate your time, And again, thank you for participating and thank you for your questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions that you think of potentially between now and the end of the meeting, you can ask during our open forum, and Jeff will stick around in case you have any. So moving on to the next slide should be Mia Tanoya Hill, our training and development team manager. And she's going to walk you through, oh wait, hold on. I apologize. Nope, I got to pull up the agenda. Sorry, guys.
Jen from Retirement Readiness.
This is from Jennifer, right? Okay. For some reason, I closed my agenda. All right, so Jennifer Helpin Gomez from Retirement Readiness is going to go over some resources for members.
Okay, thanks, Kim. So thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Helpin Gomez. I'm one of the managers in Retirement Readiness. And we're responsible for member education. And we thought this would be a good opportunity as we become nearer and closer to a new school year to provide some information for you that you can then carry on and help your employees about if they do contact you for any type of membership question regarding CalSTRS services. So if you can go to the next slide, thank you. So we just want to focus on the new career web pages we created over the last year and a half. If you haven't been on our website in a little while, there have been some major updates and upgrades to the member-facing educational side of the site. And so we created specific career web pages for new educators, mid-career, those nearing retirement, and for those that are part-time educators, so that it's basically a one-stop shop for our educators wherever they are in their career. Our website is quite large, quite big. There's a lot of resources, and we wanted to try to focus in on these specific career stages to help members and employers get to the right information. So there are links and forums and publications and videos that are specific to each of these career stages in these web pages, and it's available 24/7. And so you'll get links to these resources. This presentation is on the QR code if you scanned that. So if we go ahead and go to the next page, this is just a screenshot of our landing page. And if you see that arrow that points to members, if you go to the next slide and you click that, it will bring that this section, which will break it down into the specific career stages that you can access. But below those early, mid, near, part-time sections, you'll see that just our general information to get to our tools, our webinars, how to schedule a benefits planning session, that's all listed underneath this subheading. So it's all at your fingertips. But if you go ahead and go to the next slide, if you click on mid-career, which we'll focus on as an example, it brings you to this page. On the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a drop-down where you can access the same information, or if you look at the main website or the main web page that we're on here, there's going to be 6 different tiles that you can access that will go into specific subsections for mid-career educators. Again, we have this for all of the different career stages. If you go to the next slide, this is the same page, but showing you the 6 different tiles. And each of our career stages will first focus on members accessing My CalSTRS, and that's their unique identifier, their login, so they can get their progress reports, they can communicate with CalSTRS via email, and there's different things that you can do as an active member and a retired member. So if we go to the next page, this is just clicking that My CalSTRS. Again, we are really encouraging our members to do some self-service to gain access to their account information. And there's a couple of clicks on this page, Jonathan. So if you click the first one, this shows you how to go directly to the CalSTRS, My CalSTRS login. The next click shows you how to sign up. And then the next click is a helpful video. So if members get logged out or if they've never logged in before, it goes over how to go through the authentication process to get a My CalSTRS account. And if they have problems, there's resources to get their passwords reset.
So the next slide, in the middle of this tile, it's Know Your Benefits. So if we go ahead and click again, Jonathan, this is what that site will look like. And you'll see that the main topics for mid-career educators is really understanding your general benefits. We also link all of the applicable publications, the videos that are also geared towards this career stage, and FAQs. And then what's also really important, all of our career pages have a Learn and Discover booklet associated with them. So on the next slide, that will bring up the mid-career benefits and the different maybe stories or articles that are available. And then the next slide, please. The Learn and Discover booklet, we typically mail this out to people when they reach a certain career stage. And again, we really want you guys to know what we're giving your membership so that we can help them prepare in retirement. So for the mid-career educators, we will talk about the 10 most important things that they need to know about this career stage, reading about the benefits that are applicable, understanding how their estimates work, and start picturing what retirement may look like for them in the next 10 or 15 years. So on the next slide, this shows you the mid-career videos that we think are most helpful for this group. And then the next slide as well. Sorry, we're going through this kind of quickly, but the mid-career considerations. So click again, Jonathan. What we want our mid-career educators to know is electing an option that's helping them help support someone if they were to pass away, their benefits go to their loved ones. Also thinking about redepositing or purchasing some service credit if they took approved leaves of absences, and then that one-time death benefit. It's applicable to anyone in their career stage, but again, we still have members that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that still haven't designated beneficiaries for this, and it's very, very important that they do that. In the next slide, Jonathan, we also talk about mid-career webinars that are the best fit for these educators. So if you go to the next slide, the ones that we do encourage is Start Saving Now with Pension 2, which is our 403B and 457 program, My Retirement Benefits, Plan for Your Future. And then we also start encouraging members to go to our group benefits planning sessions. So these mirror our individual sessions where they receive an estimate. They are able to talk with a benefits specialist and ask questions that are regarding their account. So again, as these mid-career educators go through their career and get closer to retirement, we hope that they have a plan in mind and have made major decisions so that when they move into closer to retirement, it's not an unknown plan, that they know what they're getting into, and it's not a scary situation. Moving on to the next slide, we also encourage every career stage to look into CalSTRS Pension 2. So with that, if you click that tile, it goes to this page. Go ahead, Jonathan, thank you. And so I'm just giving you some information here. Again, this is our 403B and 457 program. Not only CalSTRS members can participate, but any school employee. So that would be anybody that's a CalPERS member. If you work in the library, if you are a janitor, if you are an HR representative, you are able to participate in our 403B and 457 programs. So if you are interested, here's the phone number and our website for Pension 2, and then 403B Compare. So if you log in, select your employer, you can compare all of the products or programs you're able to participate in regarding the 403B and 457 arena. The next slide. And again, it's just another push that if you already have a product with another company, that's great. You are saving for retirement, but we also offer statement comparisons. CalSTRS Pension 2 tends to be pretty competitive. We don't charge exorbitant fees. We are not making money off of our membership. We're really providing this as a service. So you know that if you want to compare your product to CalSTRS Pension 2, you can again call that number and we can set up an appointment for you to meet with one of our Voya representatives to go over what you currently have and what CalSTRS can maybe do to help you save money. And then the next slide, please. The last thing that we do want to focus on is that retirement benefits calculator. So at their fingertips on our website, our members can go ahead and run as many estimates as they want. Next slide.
This is just a screenshot. Members just have to put in their information regarding when they want to retire, their service credit, if they have sick leave, so on and so forth. They just follow the instructions and they'll be able to generate pretty accurate, good estimates where they can start planning for retirement. And then just the last couple of slides as I wrap up. Again, these are the main access points for you if you want to help your membership as they come to you for questions. Again, we don't want you to bear the burden of all of the education about CalSTRS. We want to do that here. But if you're able to just point them in the right direction, that would be great. Again, there's that member landing page for all of the career stages. But in general, all of our forms and publications are accessed by forms and publications at CalSTRS.com. And then all of our benefit planning services. So making an appointment either virtually or in person. Also, all of our workshops are available through this benefits planning services section of our website. And then the last slide again is customer service, their hours of operation, and then our website very simply, CalSTRS.com, My CalSTRS. And you as an employer, if you would like us to come out either in person or virtually to provide any of our educational services, our webinars or workshops, we're happy to do that. We do have a new online portal or form that you can fill out, and I believe it's on the external affairs side of the website. You can go ahead, fill that out. It goes to external affairs, and then it comes directly to me, where then I can see if it's in person, where the local office can come out and provide information for you. So again, we are operational. We're trying to do as much as we can, extend our hours, even do some work on Saturdays to help our membership and you to provide the best information that we can regarding CalSTRS benefits. So with that, are there any questions that I can help with this regarding our retirement readiness division?
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I don't see any hands. I think you're in the clear too.
Perfect.
But again, I know that Jennifer ran through this really, really quickly, but again, we wanted to take the opportunity with today's meeting and the start of a new school year to just, make sure that folks at the district HR office has had access to the information that we have on our website. Again, all of the materials for today's EAC are on the EAC page at CalSTRS.com. So that's another really easy access point. And again, you've heard me say this multiple times, but we're here to share the workload. And if our retirement readiness folks can be of benefit or service to either you as staff or your employees who have questions specific to CalSTRS benefits, we can help you with that. And Jen and her team are a great resource, can either participate virtually, in some cases, and may be able to come to the district or the school. So again, please reach out if there is need. So that we can work collaboratively for, again, the benefit of your employees and our membership. So thanks, Jen. Appreciate your time today. And I don't see any questions. So let's move on to the agenda. And I believe Joycelyn is up next. The legislature, of course, they've just started their summer break. So everyone is taking a big sigh of relief. But we'll turn over to Joycelyn for an update.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joycelyn Martinez-Way, Director of Governmental Relations. And we can go to the next slide. And I will update on bills that were introduced in 2023. There were a couple we went over last time on reporting bills that were held up in Senate appropriations. So they are removed from the list if you're wondering what happened to those. But I'll start with SB 252, fossil fuel divestment, which we have an opposed position on, and that bill was held in the Assembly Public Employment and Retirement Committee. SB 261, we have a support position on, and that bill has moved to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. SB 327 is one of our sponsored bills, and that has moved to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. SB 885 is another one of our sponsored bills, and that has moved all the way back to the Senate for concurrence and Assembly amendment. So one vote left on that one. And SJR 1, we have a support position on, that was actually chaptered. And HR 82 at the federal level remains in the House Ways and Means Committee for now. And I didn't go into any detail, so if any of you have questions on the content of the bills, I know we've gone over them before, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but let me know. And then here we have SB 432. These are the bills that we don't have positions on. So no official position. SB 432 is cleanup language for AB 1667 regarding overpayments from last year. That bill's actually made it to the Assembly floor, and we are anticipating amendments before it moves back to the Senate. And then SB 765, which has provisions related to the post-retirement earnings limit exemption, to the post-retirement earnings limit, the annual limit that we have, as well as the separation from service requirement. And one of the pieces is an exemption to that annual limit. But that bill actually was also held in the Assembly Public Employment and Retirement Committee. It's, of course, an ongoing issue, and so I'm sure conversations will continue about that, as well as the divestment bill I mentioned earlier. Although they were held, I think things are still bubbling up around those. So we'll be keeping a close eye on them. And I'll stop there to see if there's any questions about 2023 legislation. So move on to the next slide, and we can always come back if we need to. But now I'll do an update on regulations. So related to AB 1667, we're working on regulations, and right now they are basically focused on the employer audits portions of that bill, as well as the appeals process. And so we continue to work internally to put together language that we'll be able to share with stakeholders and constituent groups for what we call pre-notice feedback. So before we start the official rulemaking process, we do go out and try to get people's thoughts on what the language is. Is it clear? Are we ready to go? So that way, when we do notice a package of regulations, then we can probably minimize any feedback that we get through that process and get them done pretty quickly. So we have not yet started the pre-notice work externally on AB 1667. So we will revisit that as we can. And then here's one, the second bullet is on our CalSTRS 2% at 62 members and compensation being paid each pay period. And essentially this set of regulations clarifies that compensation for service performed on either side of an established pay period is credible compensation. And that package is going to be officially noticed for the rulemaking process through the Office of Administrative Law this Friday. So keep an eye out on their website and for the register if you're interested, also on our website on the regulations page. And I do want to mention our inbox for regulations is regulations@calstrs.com. Pretty straightforward, but again, it's regulations@calstrs.com. So if you would like any information about this regulations package on the CalSTRS 2% at 62 members, or on any other regulations package, you can definitely send us a message at regulations@calstrs.com. And that's also relevant to the third bullet point on this page, which is updates to our penalties and interest regulations. So we got our direction from the board to go ahead and work on some updates to those regulations. And we actually are ready to share what we've come up with. And this, again, has not been officially noticed yet. This is the pre-notice work. And so I'm going to share on the next slide some of what the language is. And if you'd like to see the more specific language, you can again email us at that inbox, or if you want to be up to date on when we do actually notice the regs. And then I'll pause after I go through this information about the penalties and interest regulations updates to see if there are questions. I'll actually probably pause at the end of this page, and then there's a second slide as well. So for the updates to the penalties and interest regulations, we are adding some additional exemptions to P&I. And I pulled this language out of the DB late report section of the regulations, and you're all familiar. There's a DB report section, a late CB report section, late DB contributions, and late CB contributions. So there's kind of 4 sections in the regulations. And so language similar to this appears in all 4. It varies a little bit because the terminology varies a little bit between all those 4 sections, but I just pulled the one so you can see it. And so I'm going to kind of go through this almost verbatim. I'll tell you what the ellipses are standing in there for. So basically the new subdivision that we're adding to all those sections says those portions of a monthly report that are otherwise late shall not be subject to penalties. And it says under this section, under any of the following circumstances. And so we've got essentially 3 circumstances that we're outlining here where penalties and interest would be waived. So the first is the employer's operations were impaired because of a natural, human-made, or war-caused emergency under the conditions defined by the California Emergency Services Act. And that ellipses stands in for the reference to the code section of the statutes that are part of the California Emergency Services Act, if all of the following are true. And it's two things, is that the penalty is directly related to the employer's impaired operations during the emergency event, and system staff possess documentation of such an emergency event. So it's a known event. So that's the first exemption. The second is that if there are any reports or contributions that came in that the employer reported information under direction given by the system in accordance with, and then it's Education Code Section 22325, 22326, or both. And just to remind you, Education Code Section 22325, excuse me, the first one listed there is about the resources that we have posted related to AB 1667. So if there's something in a resource that you were following, and then there's a shift and penalties and interest are accumulating, but because you reported it in line with 22325, then that would be a situation where that reporting would be exempt. And then 22326, we just talked about the advisory letters. So if an advisory letter is received by an employer and they use that to report, then if there are any penalties and interest associated with that later, because there was a shift, then this exemption is going to apply, or in a situation where they both apply. So that's the second exemption. And then the third is the penalty is demonstrably a result of an error by the system. And so then that's another situation in which the penalties and interest would be waived. And so I'm going to stop there. That's the gist of I would say these are main changes we're making and related to the exemptions. You know, there's already existing exemptions. So this sort of adds to that list and all four of those sections I mentioned. And again, if you want to see how that all lays out in the nitty gritty of the regulatory language, please let us know at regulations@calstrs.com. And then also eventually this will get noticed in the rulemaking register at the Office of Administrative Law. And so you can tune in at that point as well. But I don't see any hands getting raised. So I'll move on to the next screen. And this is the other piece of the regulations that we're looking at adding. And this is going to be a standalone section and talking about payments for penalties and interest. And so if those payments aren't received within 30 days after the invoice date, they're subject to regular interest from the initial invoice date until the balance is paid in full. So this is just codifying what is already in practice. And we want that to be clear for everyone in the regs. So that one's pretty simple and straightforward to read, especially on a screen. Okay, now, sorry, I'm pausing in case there are questions. And I can always return to this.
I don't see any questions, Joycelyn, but I was thinking it might be good for us to clarify that just like all of the other P&I exemptions, the P&I will get charged initially because there's no way for the system to stop it currently. And there's no way for the system to know that that's why those contributions are coming in. So you will still have to essentially appeal the P&I as it comes in. And I also, if we know that those contributions are coming in, that'll be an ongoing conversation, but it still will show up as a P&I charge when those reports come in.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim. That is a very good clarification. Yes, there's still the dispute process that you go through today. And you know that I've mentioned the 4 existing kind of reasons that you can dispute P&I, and this will add to that list where you can dispute. Thank you, Kim. That's much appreciated. Excellent. Okay, no hands. So next slide. Okay, now it was sort of funny. This slide moves into the future and then I go to the past. So apologies, I'm skipping around in the metaverse. For 2024, which will be here before we know it, we are already looking at potential legislative proposals. And I do want to give you a heads up that we are looking at simplifications to the teacher's retirement law in relation to credible compensation and credible service. You are all familiar with AB 1667 from last year, and it did a lot of pieces kind of on what I would say would be the back end of our processes where overpayments may come up. And we are working on the simplification so that as you know, our credible comp and credible service laws are quite complex, and we want to see if we can simplify that so that on the front end, it's even easier to execute the work that you do, and there is less confusion and less mistakes and all those things. So we think that together that will be a great package and path forward. So we are working on that, and I will revisit the topic, maybe with some of my colleagues here, to go through some of the details at a future meeting. It is possible, and you know this, we take proposals to our board in November, and I know we'll probably get into the calendar later, but I think our November EAC meeting is after our November Teachers Retirement Board meeting. So that's why I wanted to mention it to you, and so that you can stay apprised if there's a board item that goes up for the November meeting, and then we'll of course come back and talk to you more about it. That's one potential proposal. And we will, as always, have a housekeeping proposal, and we're working on pinning down the specifics of that, but we'll come back to you and go through that as well. So that's just the future forecast. And then we'll go to the next slide. And looking back at legislation that went through in 2022, you've already gotten some of an update from Jeff on AB 1667, and Mia is coming up on other updates on implementation of the benefits over payments bill. So I won't go into any other details here. And then on SB 868, SBMA increase, and this is for members who retired prior to 1999. And I know you all don't necessarily have to get into the benefit calculation pieces, but we are getting questions. So I just want to mention to you that the benefit, this increase starts to accumulate on July 1st of 2023. So we just passed that. So it's starting to accumulate, but our SBMA benefits go out quarterly. And so after the first quarter accumulates on July, August, September, in that SBMA check that's going out at the end of September, this increase will be included in that. So nobody would have seen a change on July 1st because that's when the benefits started to accumulate. And so we're on track right now to have everything go out in that timely fashion. But just wanted, in case anyone brings you questions, they're welcome to call us, but it's wouldn't have shown up yet. And I'll pause there for any last questions, but otherwise that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Joycelyn.
Thank you.
No questions, no hands raised. All right. So even though I was trying to bring her up early, I believe now we get to bring up Mia Tanoya Hill, our training and development manager, to talk about resources, 1667 resources, and employer training updates for you all. So, all right, Mia, take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. So today I'm here to share with you guys a little bit about, or to share with you all a little bit about the resources pursuant to AB 1667. For those of you who followed AB 1667 very closely, this may feel like more of a refresher, but for those of you who this might be your first EAC, or you followed a bit at the beginning, but want to know more now that we have implemented some of these materials, we're going to get into that information today. And then our last slide is just going to be a little bit about what employer training is going to look like in this fiscal year. If I could get my next slide, please. Oh, looks like I'll go ahead and I'm going to share my presentation through my screen. So I'll go ahead and switch gears there. All right, thank you all for your patience. So, like I mentioned, we're going to cover these updates on resources and employer training. So resources are pursuant to Education Code Section 22325 that we've mentioned a little bit earlier in this meeting as well. So this education code requires that CalSTRS at least annually identify and provide resources that interpret and clarify the applicability of creditable compensation and creditable service. So this provided us a fantastic opportunity to further clarify these areas that the law can be more broad and to provide more examples on how that would be applied. So official resources are going to be designated as such on CalSTRS.com under employers, tools, and guidance. And we're going to take a look at where that is in CalSTRS.com. So I'm going to switch screens again here. So when we're on CalSTRS.com and we are looking for the official resources pursuant to Education Code 22325, we're going to go under our employers section here, under tools and guidance. And then we're going to click here on employer resources. So this section will include anything that's been officially designated a resource. If it is not here on this page, it has not been designated a resource. And we'll share a little bit later on in this presentation how that impacts the overpayment liability. I'm going to switch gears back into my presentation. So let's continue forward. So employers are required to stay informed of the law and changes in the law, revocations of resources, new resources, and resources that supersede a previous resource. And we include this information, as we know, and saw that the bills previously, that the law does change, which will necessitate our update of the resources. And so while you may have a previous resource that will apply to that previous period of time, you'll want to keep in touch with those latest resources and those latest materials for prospective application. To receive a notification, you can subscribe to email updates on CalSTRS.com. So that page that I showed you just a moment ago has an option to subscribe to email updates. When you subscribe to email updates, if your email address changes or your contact information changes, you are responsible for updating that contact information in that same spot at CalSTRS.com. So the resources will take precedence over advisory letters, but they don't take precedence over the law. And the reason that we include that call out is because advisory letters really look at a snapshot of a specific instance in a specific instance in time. But as we know that the law may update, resources may update. So if a new resource has updated clarifications regarding something that you have a previous advisory letter on, you may want to seek a new advisory letter, but that resource will take precedence over that previous advisory letter. Now, that's not to say that every time we update a resource that would impact the advisory letter you have. It just depends on what was updated, whether that was pursuant to law and things like that. So if the compensation is reported in accordance with the resources in effect at the time the compensation is reported and is later have been determined to be reported in error, any resulting overpayment will be deemed a CalSTRS error. So this is the important distinction on what is a resource and what is not a resource. So like I mentioned, anything on that page under that employer resources pursuant to Education Code 22325 will hold this overpayment liability here. But materials that are not designated resources would not hold this weight. And so you may be thinking, well, what are the materials that we're talking about? The other materials that you may interact with and that you may take at different points in your interactions with us are training materials. So training materials, the intention is to take all of this content and put it into digestible slides or digestible computer-based trainings based on adult learning principles. So training materials won't contradict what's in the resources or won't provide different interpretation that's what's in the resources. They're an opportunity for us to help better educate employers who are new to reporting to CalSTRS, employers who would like a refresher in reporting to CalSTRS, or want to hear employer trainers talk more about examples as it pertains to their workloads, and have an opportunity to ask questions to a live trainer. So training materials will still exist. They will still be on the Employer Learning Center and the Employer Support Portal. These will still be maintained. We'll just continue to take a look at what should be designated a resource pursuant to these conditions set by the law. All right. So I mentioned that our resources will exist and we'll still have employer training materials to educate employers using the best adult learning principles that we have applied. And when you're interested in employer training, whether you are new to CalSTRS or CalSTRS reporting or are interested in refresher materials, you can visit the Employer Learning Center for new and updated content. So our intention is to continue to improve based off of the evaluations that we offer to employers who have taken training, and to continue to provide the best service that we can for our employer reporting partners. For this fiscal year, the training calendar will be released in 2 parts. So we're going to share more information as we release it later this month about how to register for webinars and where to find that information. It will be, I'll give a sneak preview, it will be in the Employer Learning Center. So you have a centralized location for all of your employer training needs. But part of the reason that we're releasing this in 2 separate parts is because we are going to resume in-person training opportunities this fiscal year. As many of you may be familiar, we currently have construction at our headquarters building, but in the second half of this fiscal year, we'd really love to utilize that space to offer our employer training services to as many employer reporting partners as we can reasonably accommodate. So that is something that we're going to be pursuing in the later half of this fiscal year, and something that we are very excited to return to in-person training opportunities with different employers throughout the state of California. I will also share with these training opportunities that if you have any questions about the training materials that I've referenced, if you're interested as a County Office of Education in having some training opportunities for your districts, please contact us at employertraining@calstrs.com. We're certainly happy to assist you with any questions that you may have about the training resources that we can offer. And if you have questions about the teacher's retirement law or the resources pursuant to Education Code 22325, please feel free to reach out to employertraining@calstrs.com. And again, we are happy to assist you with those training needs. I know that that was a brief introduction to a lot of those materials. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address them at this time.
Thanks, Mia. I think the theme for this EAC is resources in general, whether it's specific to 1667 or other resources that are available through CalSTRS or CalSTRS.com. To really help as everyone prepares for the start of the new school year.
Well, thank you, guys.
I'm not seeing any questions. No? Okay. Again, in the theme of resources, we did just want to make sure that folks were aware that the governor did, the legislature did pass the budget to the governor who signed it. So we are now in a new fiscal year. We just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that rates, CalSTRS contribution rates remain unchanged. So employer contribution rates will continue to be 19.1. The state contribution rate will continue to be 8.328. There's another 2.5% that's related to the supplemental benefit maintenance account, or SBMA. So you can add another 2% to the state's 8.328 for the specific exact amount. And then we've got employers, the 2% employees, the 2% at 60 members, that rate remains the same at 10.25, and our 2% at 62 members, the rate is 10.205. Also on the EAC website, we do have 2 fact sheets that are both related to the funding plan, the CalSTRS funding plan, and the contribution rates, not only for the current fiscal year, but for previous fiscal years. So again, that's another resource if members or other folks in the business office are asking about contribution rates for CalSTRS members. That is, again, another place where folks can go for additional information. So that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention. And with that, I think we're ready to go into the open forum, Kim.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we do have a directive on the contribution rates that's been out, I believe, since the beginning of June, 2023-03. So that is out there in case anyone has questions as well. And as we get started in the open forum, I wanted to remind everyone that we have are approaching the end of year deadline for 22-23 files. And that deadline is 4 p.m. on August 13th. So please make sure that all of your files are in by then, and don't wait until 3:59 to hit submit. There is a SO announcement out about that, but just a reminder while you're all here, August 13th, 4 p.m. So, all righty. And then I think, Jeff, did you want to do a brief pension solution update during open forum, or?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. I'd be happy to. So we've talked about pension solution a little bit, and that is our migration to a new pension administration system and a new secure employer website. Many of you have hopefully seen the employer readiness environment, and that is a preview of what it's going to look like in production. Recently, after negotiations with the vendor, a lot of things that are happening, we have a tentative timeline for the go live for pension solution, and it is the fall of 2025. There is some work to be done because it has to go to the board for approval of that schedule and all of that. But just to let you know, that's the general timeline that we're working with internally. And the employer readiness team that you've hopefully been working with throughout the last few, maybe a little bit more years, they will be providing more information about details as we are able to share them. So I just wanted to give you a general timeline for what the project has been working on, pending official approval. And again, you'll hear specifics from the employer readiness team when everything is ready to be shared. Just wanted to give everybody that update. Thank you, Kim, for reminding me.
Thank you. Okay, so questions on anything from today's meeting? You guys are a quiet bunch today. All right, I don't see any. Oh, there we go. We got a raised hand. Yay. Okay. Lindsay, if you could go ahead and let Lindsay unmute, that would be great. Lindsay, you want to give it a shot?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. I just want to say thank you for all of the information that you've presented today. I have a question about the advisory letters. What is the difference between the advisory letter and any email communication when I reach out to employer help or any other CalSTRS representative and they reply with advice? What's the difference between the advisory letter and this email communication?
The shortest answer is that, how I mentioned before, the weight of liability. So the advisory letter process was designed, as the authors of the bill intended, to have a formal process for compensation language included in a contract. So those complex things that come up during negotiations that you're going to include in a contract that you want some formal guidance about that will again have the weight of liability. It's all about CalSTRS sticking with our guidance to you, right? And this is a formal way to make sure that this is what we advise you to do, given all of these facts. That's why it's a little bit different from a regular request to employer help, which again, you should still rely on. But the formal request for an advisory letter includes all information applicable to that situation. It's specific to one situation. It's not conceptual. It's about that compensation item that you intend to report, and you want to know how to do it. So that's the difference, is the formality around it. And,
and so it's member specific versus
yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way to, it could be a group of members. For example, I have this group of preschool teachers and we want to change their salary schedule and do something with it. Is that okay? How would we do it for this special set of educators? How does this work? And that's what we would reply to for that, rather than, hey, can you just kind of explain creditable compensation or what it wouldn't be creditable on a higher level? That again is an answer that we can provide every day and get you what you need. So that's the difference, if that makes sense. I like your analogy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I would just add, it's not actually member specific questions that we're talking about. It's contract specific questions. So if there's a compensation item in a contract, specifically that you have a question about, those are the kinds of things that are appropriate for an advisory letter. If it's member specific, we have other like the ombuds office or generalized questions to, you know, the training and development team. Those are the more appropriate avenues for member specific questions.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification, Sam.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I see Kyle, I believe. If we can get Kyle's mic unmuted, and then Kyle, you'll have to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Kyle. We're not hearing you. Maybe you have a mute button on your end that you have.
Can you hear?
There we go.
Okay, sorry. My name is Rosa Hartman. We are in a group here, and Kyle is part of my group. So we're in a laptop, so I'm sorry. That's misleading, but the question that we have is on the AB 1667 and the invoices that will be coming out. Are they already mailed out? How are we going to get them? And what's the first due date?
They have not been mailed out yet. So the intent is still, as we previously discussed on EAC, and to get them out this summer. And I know that's a little bit vague, so I don't have an exact date that they're coming out, but the due date will be on the invoice once they are sent out. It's a quasi-manual process that we're working through right now because this is new for us. And in the future, hopefully we can do them more timely, closer to the quarter in question.
Okay. And the form to pay is still in process. We don't know how we're gonna process payment.
I believe it's through AC. I don't know if we have FSB, anyone from financial services that can help with that. I know Nalini gave us an update last EAC. I believe it's through the normal ACH, how you would pay, send contributions in, but we can provide more information on that if necessary.
Nalini actually has her hand up. And Nalini,
oh, good.
You
Thank
want to
you.
clarify?
Oh, great. Thank you, Nalini.
Yes, I can clarify. Thank you, Jeff. So yes, the first invoice that will go out in summer of this year, you will have to pay that through a check. We do not have ACH set up for that. But going forward, the intent is to have ACH payment process set up. But the first invoice will be through a check.
In addition to that, is that going to be the same payment system we do with the regular contributions, or is it a different website? Because that was the discussion, right, last time?
So you will mail the check.
Yes, but then after that, we're working into ACH using the same system STRS has, or it will be a different way?
I believe so. It will be the same system, but you cannot combine the payment of any contribution payment or any excess sick leave invoice payment or retirement incentive payment together with this.
And are those invoices being mailed paper or
the first set of the first? Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Are they being sent directly to the school districts or to the COE?
It will. The invoices for the AB 1667 that's related to AB 1667 will be emailed to the county, not to the district.
Email, you will use the email in the CalSTRS, like the main contact person?
So the intent is the first set of invoice, we had said that we will use the SEW system, the SO system. However, for the first set of invoice, we are not ready for that. So we will be using the county Office of Education, the county emails, and then send it via an email. We'll post an announcement in SO that the invoice will be sent to you via email.
Very good. Thank you so much. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Nalini.
Thank you.
Any other? I see another hand from, oh no, that was Nalini's, so we're good there. Anyone else with questions? Okay, So if you think of anything, please feel free to use that advisory. There's no advisory committee email questions, Danielle?
There is none.
Perfect, thank you. So if you happen to think of a question that needs to get answered and you can't remember which email address to use from the presentations today, you can always use that advisory committee at calstrs.com email address, and the folks manning that particular box will make sure it gets to the right people. And then I do believe, Diane, do we have a date for our next EAC that we want to put out to everybody?
We do, and that is going to be November 8th. It will be a virtual meeting, so we'll get that. It is on the bottom of today's agenda, that meeting date. We'll get that also updated and included on the EAC website at calstrs.com. And we will, again, see everybody then. Oh, apparently it's already, the November date is already on the webpage.
Perfect.
So I stand corrected on that. So again, mark calendars November 8th. And I think with that, I mean, I can hang out for a little bit just in case folks have some additional questions. But again, just appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. Hopefully the July EAC works a little bit better than an early August date. Granted, with the school calendars shifting and changing in the starting of the school year and some deadlines related to reporting, we wanted to try to flatten that workload a little bit. So hopefully this mid-July conversation and dialogue is both timely, and there's a lot of information and resources that can be used and applied as folks prepare for the upcoming school year. So with that, I think we might be done.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks.